Hi everybody, Clive Smallman here, personal and professional productivity and performance, and also little bits and pieces about business continuity and recovery. Took part in a fabulous webinar this morning where we were all talking about how we were going to cope, what we were going to do with what's going on in the world. We started to talk a little bit about what happens when you get into a crisis situation, and for some people, unfortunately, the situation is as the crisis hits, performance drops off, and we drop down, and in financial terms, we drop down out of the profit zone, and we drop towards break even, and eventually towards loss. Now, what we don't want is what happens with some folk is that they end up going towards insolvency. What usually happens in that model is we get into a basically continuity mode, and then we try and recover the business and get back to where we were before. Now, what these fine folk were talking about in the webinar that we hosted this morning was to take a different point of view on that. And that is that when you get to a situation like this, to a crisis, either be it through a natural disaster or a health emergency or something else that's gone on, another way to look at it is that as you hit the crisis zone, you use it as a pivot point to have a real hard look at what your business is and what you need to do to change that. There's all sorts of things you can do, but you've got to start to think about how can I change, how can I actually use this pivot to work for me and for my business. Now, one of the big things about hitting a pivot point like that is how do you actually take the brakes off? Because it may be that you're used to working in a certain way or working with a certain people or using a particular process. And so you've got to think about what it is that's constraining you when you're looking to actually shift your business quite radically. Now, I can tell you from experience over the last few years, the thing that is probably constraining most people more than anything else is this little section of your head here, what sporting people call the top 2 inches. We really need to have a look at how we can get out of our heads, get over ourselves, and get moving forward. In production terms, it's what we call a constraint. There's a constraint that is something that's holding you back. It may be that you need to learn to do something new. It may be that you need to learn to do something different. But either way, it's human nature to have lots of weaknesses. We do. We all have our weaknesses. But the thing that is going to be holding you back is your weakest link, the thing that holds you back more than anything else. You need to have a real good hard look and say, what is it that I'm not doing that I should be doing that could work and could actually transform my business? Example is really, well, the metaphor is you want to break the chain. You really want to drive yourself forward, move yourself forward. What can I do different? How do I cope? What sort of skills have I got to learn? Now, with me, I got into a bad performance loop towards the end of last year. What I needed to do was to get over myself to start with, but I needed to have a look at how I was actually planning my work. I was getting not enough done during the day. For me, it was that I'd forgotten my planning discipline, I'd forgotten my action discipline, and I was unable to develop my bias for action. So what I did was I spent more time on planning, more time purposefully planning. If you plan, then you get a way forward. Now, that doesn't mean you spend all your time planning, but you do need to spend part of your time. That's just one example. There are so many other things that you can do. So this is a time to pivot. Yes, there's lots of challenges. I'm not diminishing that, but there's also lots of opportunities. If you're going to pivot, you need to take the brakes off. So have a think about that. What is it that you can do to really help yourself develop and actually change your organisation?